So I thought I would do a little video for you guys on how to do kisscut graphics while using both a roll printer or a plotter and a UV flatbed. I've seen a lot of people struggle with tacking down their material, registration, so this is going to kind of cover all of it. It will be a kind of brief because the process you just kind of have to get down with some practice, but once you get the rhythm of it, it actually doesn't take that long. I could probably get one of these. Actually, I think I got all of these done in like an hour. But yeah, these are all kisscut, so all of these are actual decals. This is kind of a niche market for things, but there's tons of applications that you could use this stuff for. You can see down here, this is kind of what it ends up looking like. But anyway, the material that I'm using is just a generic, I think it might be, shoot, I forget the brand of it. It's not Oracal, but you can use Oracal if you want. It's just a clear vinyl with a white backing, white paper backing. But yeah, so let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing, of course, as always, you're going to want your artwork prepared and laid out appropriately. So the way that I have this is actually probably a little bit different than some of you might need to do it, but since the actual artwork for me, which is basically this right here, since I have so many different size sheets that I'm working with, I just did a generic bounding box on the outside here, which is used as my registration template. So you don't necessarily need to have this size. You can do the size of your artwork, but for me this is just easier. That way I have one registration box that I'm working with for all of my art files. So here you can see I have all of my cut lines set up. So I have this one and then the actual artwork here. I'm not doing a perf cut on it just because sometimes I find that registration can get a little wonky if it has to if the roll has to feed back and do a kiss cut and then a perf cut. So I just prefer to do all kiss cuts and then trim the edges like here and here. So anyway, once I have my cut file set up, I also export my spot white, which is this right here. I export my spot white and my actual artwork into their appropriate files as well. That way all the artwork is done at one time. So once I have that, I send over my cut file, and what I'm using is a ioline, I think it's an S300. Whoa, my gimbal just got all weird. You can see that here's my sheet size. Oh, actually, this one's pretty close. But you can see that the final cut is smaller. That's because, like I said, I trim the edges of this. So I plot everything on my material, I trim it, and then once that's done, I actually go back, and where the registration marks on my bounding box, the outside bounding box where you can kind of see it, yeah, I trim the final edges so that my material is square. That is probably the most crucial part to all of this. If you don't have a steady hand, if you can't trim your material, you're probably going to have a hard time with registration because that's the next part. So once I have my material cut, I go ahead and I print my template. I print my template on my printer. And these guys, the seklema mats, hands down, absolutely necessary. They will keep all the bubbles, all the waves, all the folds that might have happened in your material out of the print process. So definitely worth the investment. I think these were like 90 bucks with shipping per piece. They do have bigger sizes, but they can tend to get a little bit more pricey. So I piecemealed these out. I got one at a time, which is why one is like terribly dirty. One is pretty clean. So anyway, that outside bounding box that I was telling you about, I printed that directly onto my seklema mat, okay? And that is my registration. This one corner kind of peeled up. But anyway, I take it once it's trimmed down, I lay it down, make sure the orientation is correct, kind of smooth it out just to make sure there's no bubbles, and then I go ahead and print. My registration has been, I don't know, maybe 0.5 millimeter off at some points, which is important, but I think it's because my corners came up, it was late, I was getting tired, and I know the tolerance of this job, so I was okay with it. But for the most part, for doing that run, all the registration was pretty on point. So this is kind of a final product. I don't think this one has white underneath, but yeah. It's really cool. Like I said, tons of applications that you could use, you know, moving forward with stuff. I've done headstocks on instruments for like guitars and basses. These are BMX decals. Are going to be going on bikes for people who are restoring them. And there is, like I said, there is a spot white like on this dyno one down here. You can see the spot white and the clear. And it is very, very resistant. So, like, and that's with nails. That shit is not coming off. Obviously, over years, it probably will just from, you know, sun if it gets too much exposure. But, yeah, like I said, for the most part, it's a pretty simple process. If you're doing 1 or 2, definitely worth it. Good profit margin in it. If you're quick with software and you got, like, a good eye, like I said, for the registration, that's probably the most killer part. Like, you can see right here. Mine was off just a tiny little bit, but like I said, for the tolerance of the project, it's still great. So, yeah. Hope that helped.